Hi everyone, we're going to talk about compare-contrast writing in this video, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to get ideas, how to organize those ideas, and how to connect those ideas for writing about comparisons or contrasts or both. It's a mode that we use all the time when we're speaking, when we want to convince people of things, and we also use it in academic writing all the time. You may or may not be aware, but you're probably already using it. So let's just make sure that you're doing it in a way that can help you convince people that you're right, even if you're not, because isn't that what writing's all about sometimes, is we're convincing people using really strong arguments to argue our opinion. Compare means look at similarities. Contrast means look at differences. Now, you can look at only similarities. You can write a comparison paper where you just focus on similarities in your paper. Or you can just focus on contrasting, looking at differences. Or you can do both. It's up to you. Most of the time, it's up to you, but you really want to make sure you know what you're going to write about and what you want to say. I always like to talk about things that I'm familiar with, so I'm going to talk about running and swimming, okay? So let's just look at those two sports. My whole reason why I want to compare the two or contrast them is because I want to convince people that I think, even though I love swimming, I want to convince people that running's a better option. I can't just say running's better. They're going to be like, why? Why is it better? What? And then I have to have a reason. And if I haven't thought about it, I'm not going to have a reason. If I've thought about it, I would have come up with some ways to compare the two or contrast the two in ways that shows that running is advantageous. So let's talk about how to do that. I always recommend using a Venn diagram. You put the two things you're going to be writing about, and they need to have some sort of similarity, okay, from the beginning. Running and swimming are both sports, okay? So it makes sense that we can compare them. If I put running and markers, that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. So make sure from the beginning you're writing about things that already have a point of comparison, that are already somehow within the same realm, okay? All right, then you draw two circles around it. In the middle, this is where there are similarities. Here's where there's differences. So now you have to think. Okay, I thought for a while, I came up with some things that I think are different about them. Running is social. You can run and talk with people, but you can get lots of injuries from running. It's easy to access. You just have to find a place to run and maybe have shoes, but a lot of people run without shoes, so you don't really even need to access expensive shoes. And stress relief. That's what I thought of. Over here for swimming, I pointed out that it's more solitary. Even if you do it with a team, you got your head in the water the whole time. You're not really talking to anyone. It's harder to access because you have to find water. Where do you find water? Pools or oceans or rivers or lakes, but that's hard. That's not easy to find sometimes. Equipment, you need a lot of equipment. You need to have expensive suit, you need to have expensive goggles and cap and all these different things. But great thing about it is that you don't really get injured with swimming because you're in water. And it's stressful. I mean, I put that. I think it's stressful just because when I'm swimming, since I'm not talking to people, I'm thinking about a million things and I'm not focusing on swimming. I'm just thinking. So it's stressful for me. All right, now what about similarities? Okay, so I kind of got some ideas for similarities, but not a lot. Maybe I can think of more. Maybe I won't. Maybe I just can say more about the differences. I only came up with that they both have health benefits and that they both allow the people to make friends. Because even with swimming, you can make friends if you're on a team. Okay, so at this point now I say, okay, I still want to point out that I think running is a better option. So how am I going to do that? I have a lot more to say about the differences between these sports. So I'm going to focus on the differences. I'm not even going to look at the similarities. Let's take that out. But because I'm going to write a 5-paragraph essay, 3 is a good number. 3 body paragraphs in the body of that 5-paragraph essay. That's a great place, 3. So you want to find 3 things that you can talk about. And I say, look for 3 points of comparison, even if you're not comparing. But you need 3 points of comparison. So let's look at these again and see if we can find a connection. So running is social. Swimming is solitary. There we go. That is a similarity there. I mean, it's a difference. They're different, but we're talking about the same point, which is whether you do it with people or you do it alone. So I'm going to point this one out over here, and I'm going to say that it's, so I point out between these two, I'm just going to call it social right now. I can think about what I want to call it later. Injuries. Oh, no injuries. Okay, so I'm going to call that one the physical. I don't know what yet, physical something, but I got it, okay. Easy to access, hard to access. Okay, so this one I can call access. Okay, over here, stress relief, stressful. Okay, so I could focus, I can make a fourth point, okay, stress. So let's take a look at the points of comparison that I pulled out from my brainstorm. I have social, physical, access, and stress. I really want to focus on just 3 of those. So what I'm going to do is, I think I can say more about these 3 than this. I'm just going to focus on these 3 for my paper. So to be honest, I've been thinking about this a little bit and I actually changed my mind. I'm not going to focus on the physical. I'm going to focus on equipment. I think I can say a lot about that, and I'm going to add it to this point as well. You'll see my paper. Okay, so I pulled out those 3 points of comparison that I want to focus on for building my argument in this paper, and those are social, access, equipment. I'm going to say a lot more about them later. I don't need to figure out exactly how to write them right now. I'm just trying to get the ideas clear in my head, okay? And a point you should know is that you can organize these however you want in your paper. I would suggest that the writer choose which one they think is the most impactful, most important, and put it last. Because I always like to say, save the best for last, because that's the last point the reader's going to read, and that's the last chance you get to convince them. Okay, so there's 2 ways that you can organize your compare-contrast paper. If you're writing a compare-contrast paper where the whole thing is a compare-contrast paper, then there is a specific structure I'm going to point out. But I do want to say that you could write a paper where you just include one paragraph or even one sentence that uses compare-contrast kind of structure. What I'm going to show you in this video though is just the 2 main patterns that we use for this type of mode, okay? So the first one, and my favorite, is point by point. It's called point by point. So that just means you are going to go in the body of your paper, you're going to go point by point, okay? So let me just back up. First, of course, you want to have your intro paragraph in your essay. And at the end, you want to have your conclusion paragraph, okay? And if you need to review those things, I do have videos on those, but I'm focusing on the body right here, the pattern that we're going to use in the body, okay? So inside the body of an essay, you can have as many paragraphs as you want. I'm just going to focus on the 3 body paragraphs for a 5-paragraph essay. Now, inside of one, so you would have, it would be like this, 3 body paragraphs. Now let's focus in on what one of those would look like. So what I'm going to do in the first one is I'm going to focus on the first point, okay? And it could be any of these, but let's say it's social, the social benefits, okay? So we'll want to focus on the social benefits. The second body paragraph, I'm going to focus on access, okay? And in the third one, I want to focus on the equipment. What are you going to do inside the body of each of those paragraphs? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to compare or you're going to contrast. What are you going to compare or contrast? Well, you're going to compare or contrast the 2 things you're writing about. In this case, I'm writing about swimming and running. So in the first body paragraph, I'm going to focus on the social benefits of swimming and the social benefits of running. I'm going to compare them or I'm going to contrast them. You'll see in my paper what I do. It's up to you what you want to do. Access. What am I going to be talking about in that paragraph? I'm going to be comparing or contrasting swimming and running. But I'm going to focus on access to the sport. And then finally, equipment. I'm going to focus on swimming and running only, and comparing or contrasting the type of equipment needed for those sports. Okay, so that's how you do point by point. Okay, that's just an outline. So the other type is the block method. So again, you want to have intro, paragraph, you want to have a conclusion paragraph, but in the middle you're going to have the body. And in the body of a compare contrast paper, you're going to have blocks like this. It's really two main blocks. The first block is focusing on the first thing you're talking about, which is swimming. Okay? And the second block is talking about running. So you're only talking about swimming in this paragraph, and you're only talking about running in this paragraph. But don't forget, you got to focus on those points of comparison in this one and in this one. You got to make sure you discuss the same things, otherwise you're not really comparing or contrasting. So in here, you're going to focus on the social, the access. In this one, you're going to focus on social, access, and equipment. And in this one, you're going to focus on social access and equipment. So really, you only have two body paragraphs, but that's not true. I think it's a good idea to add a third body paragraph, sort of where you give a recommendation. You could add another paragraph where you give some sort of like evaluation or a recommendation of which one you would recommend, and then your conclusion. Okay, so let's see this in action on an essay. Okay, everyone, here we are now looking at the sample paper. I'm going to just go down here, scroll down. You can find this below. There's a point-by-point pattern here, and then the block method, which I just wrote on the board. Okay, so you can see both of those patterns there. This is only for the body of the paper. And then I have a sample paper right here. It's a simple, basic 5-paragraph essay. First person is used as support. There's no like outside sources or research being done, you know, to bring in any other support or analysis. But I think this is a great intro to compare contrast writing, so you can see the pattern. Okay. Now in this one, where I'll just tell you, I'm using the point-by-point pattern, okay? And the focus really is on contrasting these two things that I'm going to write about. Okay, so here it is. It's called The Miles Changed Me. I used to think swimming was the best way to get exercise, but after the closure of the local pool in my hometown, I was introduced to running. Miles and miles later, I found myself trying to convince people to run with me. The dollars that I saved in buying less expensive equipment, the ease of accessing running trails, and the great deal of social connections I made with people I ran with have all changed my mind. Running is indeed a better option for working out than swimming. Now, obviously, this is a person's opinion. This is not a fact, okay? And that is great. You want to develop your argument and convince people to believe you, right? Okay, so here I'm just going to highlight the thesis. Okay, don't forget there's a hook, so it's kind of like a little anecdote, and then a little transition here, and then the thesis. The thesis is running's a better option than swimming. Okay, here we go. Here's the body. Due to the many challenges that people face in finding the time and motivation to put toward exercising, ease of access is an important factor in choosing a workout. And because running is so much easier to do than swimming, it is a better option. I'm going to highlight this and make it yellow as well, because that is the topic sentence of this paragraph. It's basically saying that running is easier to access than swimming. So it's a better option. Firstly, to swim, people have to find water within which to swim. Finding water can be easy to do if people have access to a pool or a lake nearby, but for most people, this is not the case. Meanwhile, I'm going to highlight this word because this is one of those compare-contrast words that you want to use when you're comparing and contrasting. This word shows contrast. Meanwhile, so I was talking about swimming. Now I'm going to talk about running. So swimming's hard to access. Meanwhile, to get a running workout in, people simply have to find a place to run. A lot of the time, this might just mean taking a step outside of one's house and starting. And although there are places that are not ideal for running, like busy city streets, most outdoor surfaces, such as sidewalks, trails, or open fields, work quite well for a good run. Additionally, running is easier to access because it doesn't involve any shock factor to start it. To be specific, swimming requires the participants to go from being outside to submerging their bodies into water. The immediate shock of jumping into the water, which is usually cold initially, is very unpleasant, believe me. Whereas with running, the only real shock involved is going from standing to running. For these reasons, people are more motivated to run than go swimming. All right, now, those probably aren't the most convincing reasons, but it works. I mean, it follows the pattern. I'm saying swimming is harder to access than running, therefore running's better. Okay, and the first point I'm making is that running is easier to access because you just have to step outside, whereas swimming, you have to find water. So that's the first point, okay? And then over here, I say additionally, okay, it's easier because there's no shock factor. So I have 2 points, okay? The first one is here, I'm going to make it blue. And the second one is here, I'm going to make it blue. I want to point out that inside the body of your paragraph, right, you want to, yes, you're focusing on the point of comparison, which is access. And you're going to talk about swimming and you're going to talk about running. But within that, you're talking about access to swimming, access to running. And then you're talking about the shock of entering a pool and the shock of starting to run from standing. So I want you to see the pattern here where it's, okay, I'm going to highlight it to make it more clear. Swimming is pink, okay? And then running is red, okay? Running is red, okay? And swimming is pink. I just want you to see the colors because I want you to see that you're talking about swimming and you're talking about running, but you're focusing on that point, which is accessing it. Over here, we're talking about swimming and we're talking about running, but we're focusing on the shock factor, okay? And when we transition to swimming, running, or running, swimming, we're using a contrast word, okay? Most of the time. It's not always there, okay? In this case, here is that transition word, whereas, where first I'm talking about swimming, and then I'm talking about running. So you can see in this paragraph, I got my topic sentence, which is focusing only on accessing. And then I talk about water access for swimming, running, trail access for running. Okay, and I'm contrasting. And then second point is I'm talking about shock factor swimming, shock factor running, which is about access also. And then at the end, I give like a little kind of wrap up, like a little conclusion. For these reasons, people are more motivated to run than go swimming. All right, next point. Similar to ease, so here I'm actually connecting these 2 paragraphs with this transition word. I'm saying similar, so I'm going to use this as one of those transition words. I'm trying to connect and compare. Similar to ease of access to a workout, the amount of equipment that people are required to have in order to participate in running or swimming can affect their motivation to participate in one activity over the other. So here I'm going to highlight that in yellow. Because that is the point. That's the topic sentence. Now we're going to focus on the equipment that you need for these sports and how, and I'm going to argue here that because the running equipment is cheaper and just easier to get and there's less of it, it's better. Okay. Even though I don't really believe, I actually really love swimming. I'm just trying to give you an example. All right, so here's my first point in that paragraph. Swimming requires a bathing suit, a cap, goggles, and a towel and flip-flops to wear after getting out of the water. Okay, here's my first point. So with my first point, I'm making it, my point is going to be blue, right? Competitive swimsuits are necessary for doing swim workouts because they do, competitive swimsuits are necessary for doing swim workouts because they do not create drag in the water or come off the swimmer's body when diving in. These suits are very expensive, starting at $100. And because of the chlorine in pools, these suits deteriorate very quickly, requiring the swimmer to spend a great deal of money on them. Here's my all of the details and the support, what I want to say about swimsuits, okay? And that equipment. Goggles are also very pricey because they're quite technical. Okay, so this whole thing, this is all support for the gear, the equipment needed for swimming. In contrast, here I'm gonna make that green, that's that transition word. I'm contrasting to running. Running can be done with minimal equipment. Although a good pair of running shoes may be the most important piece of equipment for a runner, there are many runners that do not even wear them due in part to the barefoot running trend. If a person does choose to use running shoes, expensive ones do not have to be used. Other than that, a sports bra, a shirt, and some shorts are the only other pieces of clothing one needs. And these pieces could be used for years and years without deterioration. So you can see this paragraph is a little bit different. I just really kind of focused on the gear, and I just talked about swimming first, okay? So I'm gonna make swimming, right? I'm gonna make swimming pink. And then over here, I contrasted and I just focused on running, okay? Gear, that's what I'm talking about. Last body paragraph, finally. And I put this one last because I think it's the most impactful. It's the most important reason. The social benefits of running outweigh those of swimming benefits. Now, I didn't really transition. I could do that better. There. Most importantly, that sounds better. Most importantly, the social benefits of running outweigh those of the swimming benefits. There's my topic sentence, gonna make it yellow. First of all, even though a swim workout can be done around others on a team, the only chance that the swimmers have to talk to one another is when they're on the wall waiting for the coach to call out, ready, go. There's also a chance for swimmers to talk before and after the workout, but most people are busy and have to rush to the next activity. On the other hand, making that green, that's our transition. On the other hand, running doesn't require the participants to put their heads in water so they can actually talk. Second, because runners, especially endurance runners, train by themselves at a steady pace for miles and miles, they can hold a conversation comfortably for a long period of time. As a result of talking to someone else uninterrupted for such a long time, running partners tend to find that they have common interests. For example, I met a new running buddy only a few months ago, but because I got to spend so much time talking to her, I found out that we both like cooking. So now we share recipes with each other weekly. Without the chance to talk like we do while running, we wouldn't have been able to become such good friends. Okay, so here, I got the first point, which is just that focusing on swimming, swim workouts. Swim workouts are, swim workouts, you can't talk. On the other hand, running, make that red, you can talk, okay? And then giving support. And as you can see in this one, I'm actually giving a specific personal first-person experience example to change it up and make it more specific. Okay, conclusion. In the end, these two forms of exercise are advantageous in so many ways, but if there's going to be a clear winner, running wins the gold medal. If it offers more social benefits, it's easier to access and requires much more affordable equipment. The next time you want to convince yourself to get in a workout, please remember these points. Okay, and finally at the end you have these transition words if you just wanted to see a few of them, just to have more options. When you want to compare two things, here's a list of them. If you want to contrast, here's another list. It's on this handout. All right, happy writing.